Okay, so we left off in class with you guys filling in the body cavities based upon the body cavity picture that we had talked about. So we're going to move on to cell organization. So we've got a lot of vocabulary going on, and now we're going to look at building the body up from the smallest to the largest. So the smallest living thing is a cell. So we're going to write cell here, or you're going to type in cell, the basic unit of structure and function for all living things. It's the smallest thing that carries out the basic life functions. All right, so then there's this thing called protoplasm. All right, and so protoplasm means first substance. All right, and so this is collectively all of the living material you find in a cell. All right, so everything that comprises the inside of the cell. The percent composition of that is water. You probably remember from biology that cells are mostly water, and therefore living things are mostly water. So these are estimates, but around 80%. Protein is 15%, and minerals is 5%. There are 4 basic elements that are important to living things. C, hopefully you remember, stands for carbon. H stands for hydrogen. All right, let's flip to the other side here. Then the O is oxygen, and the N is nitrogen. Those are your 4 major ones. Sometimes you'll see the acronym CHOMPS. All right, so I just did, these are the 4 major ones, but phosphorus and sulfur are also important. All right, so the cell theory, so we looking at the cells, that kind of like how we build an organism, smallest to largest, from cell to organism. So the cells come together to form tissue, and tissues come together to form organs, and organs come together to form an organ system, and then organ systems come together to form your organism. And this is called the cell theory, and it's building up an organism. So let's look at what makes something alive. Let's look at the functions that all living things have in common. And so the first one is this gaseous exchange, not breathing, and that is respiration. That is there's cellular respiration, where you take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. Your body as a whole gets it in and out through breathing, but those individual cells, that's why we breathe, because we're made up of billions of cells, and each one of those cells need oxygen and give off CO2. So even at that cellular level, that living thing, that very small living thing, needs to gas exchange. Excretion is the removal of waste. So I said for a cell, CO2 is one of those waste products. Creation of new individuals, what's that called? Reproduction. Breakdown of food for cellular use is digestion. So we digest our food. How we eat our food, the molecules are too big to get into our cells for our cells to use for energy or to build. So we have to break it down into smaller molecules. Taking in substances by cells through the membranes, that's called absorption. So we do that at the cellular level. Our digestive system breaks down our food, and it goes into our blood, where it is absorbed eventually by our cells. Change in position is movement. So having some sort of ability to move. Movement of fluid through a system of vessels, that's what we call circulation. Ability to react to a stimulus is sensitivity. Building larger molecules from smaller molecules is synthesis. To synthesize something means to make. And the ability to increase in size and mature is called growth. All right, so those are some of the things that humans are able to do, and the characteristics of the life that we have. All right, so there are different kinds of cells: muscle cells, nervous system, nervous cells, skin cells. There's all different types of cells, and those cells have various functions, and those cells come together to work with each other to form tissues. So there are 4 major tissue types, and the first one is the muscle cells. So I said that there are muscle cells, and there are different kinds of muscle tissue based upon their job in the body. There's cardiac. Your heart is a muscle. So this cardiac refers to heart. If you don't know that, we'll put that in parentheses. There is skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles mean that it's connected to the skeleton. So when the muscle contracts, it helps you to move and move your bones. And then there's smooth muscle. The smooth muscle we'll learn, smooth and cardiac you can't control. Like you can't will your heart to beat and contract. You cannot, same thing with smooth muscle. Like when food gets into your stomach, there's smooth muscle around it that helps to churn your food and mix it with the enzymes that are in your stomach. We can't control that, but yet it happens. All right, so that's called smooth muscle. And so what are our functions? So depending upon what kind of muscle tissue we're talking about, there are various functions. So the skeletal is for movement. Locomotion, this is moving from one place to another. One place to another. What is the difference between movement and locomotion? This would be like movement would be move your arm. So you're not really moving from as a whole, not moving from one place to another, but you can move your finger, all right? Or I could get up and walk away, all right? And that would be locomotion. And then another function of your muscles that you may not think about, but think about when you get cold. What do your muscles do? What do? You shiver. All right, so another function is to produce body heat. Okay, so that's your muscle tissue. Nervous tissue, the locations of your nervous tissue. So think about your nervous system. Big one is in your brain. Then from your brain, what was in that spinal cavity? Your spinal cord. And then nerves can be collections of neurons, all right, which are your cells of your nervous system. All right, so those are your 3 different examples of nervous tissue. And what do these things do? Some examples of the function of nervous tissue. It has to do with stimuli. So we receive stimuli. So you touch something hot, all right, you're immediately going to move away. It helps to transmit stimuli. So like for you to register that you touched something hot, that signal that you've touched something hot has to travel up your arm through your spinal cord up to your brain. All right, so there's a transmitting stimuli, and then we respond. So eventually we respond to that stimuli by moving away from the hot substance that we've been touching. Okay, third type of tissue is epithelial, and so where do we find epithelial? It covers your outside of the body. So what we're really talking about is our skin. It also lines the inside of body tubes. So example I'm going to put here is your esophagus. So your food, when you swallow your food, it goes into your esophagus, which is a long tube that connects the back of your throat to your stomach, and so there's a lining there, and that's an epithelial lining, all right? And so your food will travel through that. Let's go to the next page. All right, so what is the function of the epithelial tissue? Well, on the outside, like your skin, that's your big barrier from the outside environment. So it's a big protection to us. Keeps stuff that we don't want inside of our body, and so on. Inside, like the lining of these tubes, it could be involved in secretion. So you could secrete substances. So it could maybe secrete mucus. Your windpipe, when you breathe in, your trachea is a tube that leads down to your lungs, and your air travels through that. And the trachea, the inside of the trachea, has epithelial tissue, and it secretes mucus that stuff in the air, like solid particles, pollen, bacteria, and so on, stick to, so it doesn't reach your lungs. So that's an example of secretion. The last example of a type of tissue is connective tissue. So the locations of connective tissue, it says connects bone to bone. You guys have probably heard of this word, but maybe didn't know that this is a type of tissue that connects two bones together, and this is a ligament. What connects muscle to bone? So remember that muscles are what make bones move, and so the type of tissue that goes from one muscle to a bone, so that when that muscle contracts, it moves that bone, that's called a tendon. So tendons. So now you know the difference between those. Another type of connective tissue is collagen. This is underneath the skin. As you age, you lose collagen. That helps to make more saggy skin, and so on. And elastin, the same thing, like similar to collagen there. All right, so your functions here of these is for support. So like the bone to bone, connecting one bone to another, keeps the support of your limb or whatever it is. So it's support. Helps to bind things together. All right, well, so your muscle to your bone, and also helps protect. If you've ever torn a tendon or a ligament, you'll know that it really hurts and it affects your movement, and so on. All right, so then we have organs, and organs are made from tissue. So you have organs in the various body systems. So in the digestive system, you'd have your esophagus, your stomach, and so on. So that's what I want to talk about next, because we're going to look at some major organs in the body system. So that's why I only just put, remember we're building, going through the cell theory, cells to tissue, to organs, to body systems. So we'll look at and talk about some of the organs in the various body systems. So we have the integumentary system. All right, so this is some organs. I don't know if you've ever heard of the integumentary system, but this is your skin. It's the big organ. Did you know your skin was an organ? And then there is hair as part of your integumentary system growing out of the skin, and then nails. Toenails, fingernails. Okay, so what are the functions of this? Well, we talked about the skin being made out of epithelial tissue in that it's for protection, to protect your body from the outside environment. But it also, when you touch stuff, it helps you to feel sensation, pressure, and so on. Kind of works with your nervous system there. And excretion. We sweat, all right, so you get rid of things through pores, or excrete things through the pores of your skin, okay? So that is our integumentary system. Let's look at our skeletal system. So your skeletal system, a big thing is part of your skeleton is the bones. But then there's also cartilage and ligaments. Remember, ligaments connecting bone to bone. Okay, so that we would consider part of the skeletal system. So what are your functions? All right, so your bones provide super support for your body. Imagine if we didn't have any bones, we'd be a pile of organs and skin on the ground. All right, it helps to provide support and structure. It protects us. Think of the rib cage protecting all those vital organs, your lungs and your heart in that thoracic cavity that we talked about. And then also, did you know that inside your bone you have bone marrow, and that actually produces blood cells? So blood cell production is super important as well. Okay, let's look at the next one. Moving on with our body systems, muscular system. So what kinds of organs are part of that? Well, it's the major muscles. So I put smooth here. Can you recall what the other two muscles are? So you think about it for a second. You can pause it. You should have thought cardiac, your heart, skeletal, to move your skeleton. And notice I put here part of the muscular system is tendons. So remember, tendons connect muscle to bone. All right, so we consider that part of the muscular system. So what is the functions of your muscular system? Well, a big one is movement. So I can move, I'm wiggling my foot right now. So I can move my foot. I could also get up and walk across the room. That's locomotion. We've already talked about that. And then as we talked about the muscle tissue, remember the shivering, it's also body heat production. The more you move your muscles, the more heat is produced. That's why you get hot when you exercise. You use your muscles more. Okay, nervous system, organs. The first one is your brain. Second to your spinal cord. And do you remember what the third was? Because the organs, we did it when we talked about tissue, is the nerves. So what are our functions of our nervous system? The nervous system really integrates all of the body systems. So it kind of works, I said, like your skin helps you feel sensation, but then also your nerves are what takes that to your brain for you to process that and to eventually then send a signal to your muscles to contract. So then that's your muscular system. So you can see that the nervous system really plays a role with a lot of the other systems. So let's see here. So integration of body systems. Nervous system, since it's the brain, memory, and thought, and just conscious awareness, being aware of our surroundings and how we are affecting other living things and so on. So our conscious awareness is part of our nervous system. Circulatory system. Organs of that. Big one is your heart. Then your heart is what pumps the blood, but it has to go through your blood vessels, so veins, arteries, and capillaries. We'll learn more about those later. And then your blood itself is part of your circulatory system. So what is the function of your circulatory system? Why does your heart need to pump this blood around? It's because it's transporting substances. It's transporting gas to and from your lungs. It's transporting food from your digestive system. So there's a huge transport. And then part of it is defense. As part of your immune system. White blood cells, that's WBCs, these are white blood cells. These help to counteract foreign particles in your body. So they actually engulf them and kind of destroy them. All right, so your respiratory system. Your respiratory system is your lungs, is your major one. Your trachea is, I said, that tube that leads from when you breathe in down into your lungs. So that's your trachea. And then also your diaphragm. Remember that muscle that separates the thoracic and abdominal cavities, your diaphragm there. And the functions there is to exchange gas, so exchange of gases. The two big ones, we need oxygen and have to get rid of CO2. Your digestive system, some organs here is your esophagus, your stomach, your small intestine, your pancreas, and your liver and gallbladder. So these are all various organs within your digestive system. The functions is to break down food for cellular use. So to break it down into small enough pieces, molecules, so that cells can absorb them. Okay, your excretory system. This is, we're trying to excrete, we're trying to get rid of stuff. And your kidneys is your big one. Your kidneys filter your blood. So all your cells dump all their cellular waste in your blood. And so that would be dangerous if we just let it accumulate into our blood. So our blood goes to our kidneys, and our kidneys act like a filter and filter out all these things that are not supposed to be in our blood, and your kidneys then make it and put it into what we call urine. And then your urine produced by your kidneys go to your bladder, where it's held there until eventually you feel the sensation again through your nervous system that you have to go to the bathroom, and then you can get rid of that urine. All right. So your kidneys, also your skin is considered part of the excretory system. A lot of people don't think about that, but remember, you can sweat things out. Okay. So you can get rid of things. All right. The next one is your lungs. Your lungs are where that gas exchange. So we're excreting carbon dioxide through our lungs and breathing it out. Your large intestines, and going with that, your rectum. This is where your solid waste that you don't use from what you eat goes through, and you excrete that out. All right, and so that's your solid waste there. So the function is the elimination of body wastes. All right, two more systems. Your reproductive system, the organs. If you're a male, the main one is the testes. If you're a female, the main one are ovaries. The function is the creation of new individuals. So to reproduce and make more humans. All right, and the last system here is your endocrine system. And so some organs here, your thyroid. The endocrine system as a whole produces hormones, and so your thyroid produces hormones. Your parathyroid, your pituitary, and I'm gonna put here gland. Your adrenal glands. And we'll talk about these when we do the endocrine system. Your pancreas. Notice pancreas is part of the endocrine system, but it's also part of the, if we go back here, the digestive system. So here's your pancreas. It's part of both of those, so it has a dual function. All right, so the function of your endocrine system is to regulate growth. All right, so like you produce something called human growth hormone that helps you to grow taller and to grow properly. Development and just to regulate body functions, like your thyroid, right, can regulate body temperature and so on. So it helps to regulate our internal body. And so that just gives you an overview of how we build a human, cell to tissues to organ systems, and just gives you a general idea of the various body systems, of which we'll go into more depth as we go through the course. All right, so this is where I'm going to end the video.